Okay, we're live on Facebook. Thank you. For those of you who are watching on Facebook, there's 5,000 people here. It's not like there's 15 or 20 at all. So welcome, live studio audience and internet people. My name is Andy Lockwood. Today we're going to be talking about how to pay wholesale for college, which coincidentally and also shamelessly is the title of one of my two best-selling books. And because this is a relatively manageable group and because I'm feeling really lousy and under the weather, I'm not saying that to get sympathy because who would care, but I'm explaining why I'm lazy and dressed like this. What I thought I would like to ask you guys to do is instead of me dictating what we're going to talk about tonight, I thought it'd be a lot better if you told me what you wanted to focus on just by yelling it out, and I'll put it on the board, and then I'll be able to kind of use that as a checklist. So is that okay with you guys? So you came here to the library not to see the movie next door, I assume, but it was really more to learn about college financial aid. They do have interesting workshops here, but this is one about college finance. Okay, so just yell out some stuff you want to make sure you walked away with, so that this way make sure you get all the information you were hoping for. Anybody?
How to handle savings accounts, both with parents and the child's name?
Okay, so that's not legible. Okay, so savings accounts.
What money is looked at when determining financial aid?
Okay, so I'm going to call that how financial aid works. That's going to include savings, it's going to include all the other factors. And 529. What else?
How does your other dependents affect your financial aid?
Okay, so I'm going to call that family size.
What kind of effect does your mortgage or not having a mortgage?
Okay. House or mortgage?
You got my question.
Nice.
Good question.
Nice. Took all the glory. What else? Who else? I know there's always other questions, I know. Come on.
The CSS Profile
Yeah.
versus the FAFSA. I know
Good.
they're different,
Okay.
but I don't know what.
FAFSA versus CSS Profile. Trying to see if this is even visible on this. Not at all. Okay. Largely illegible. Good. Okay. Okay. Savings, how financially works, the formula, the size of the family, house, and a mortgage, the two forms, FAFSA versus CSS Profile. What else?
Scholarships.
Okay. Scholarships. Doesn't matter how I write it down. Yeah.
Private school versus public college.
Okay, good. Let's squeeze that in here. Private
Versus state.
versus state. In terms of cost, right?
Cost and how much aid they're reference.
Good. Okay, great. These are all money questions, so that's great. Any other college-related questions?
What are the timing of all those things?
Okay.
Their
General timeline?
Their pension years or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, that just changed the timing. So that's important to know this year, a couple of weeks actually. What else? How many people here have a high school senior class of 2017? So that's maybe half. And then what about someone younger, junior, like 2018? That's more. Okay. Did I see a double hand, a repeater?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A repeat offender. We call that recidivist. All right. What about somebody younger than 2018? Okay, and then what about someone older who's already in college or so? All right, did I leave any categories out? Anyone do hard time? By the way, I did this presentation, I don't have any new jokes, so full disclaimer, I did this presentation probably 2 years ago, and I said something like that, and the guy in the front goes, doing it now. and strangely became one of my favorite clients. Yeah, because that's who I attract. All right. Any other questions? I mean, this is enough to get me started, but yeah, go ahead.
But we have multiple children at the same time that's affected.
Multiple kids. Okay, so that's family size and multiple. So every one of these questions are very common, and I get them. I don't always focus on these. Last night, I was doing a presentation in Smithtown, and I got a question about this that I have never gotten. And the question was something like, "I'm the mother of 10 kids, and I'm like, whoa, what?" And she was like normal and skinny and happy, and I was like, "How do you?" Yeah, it was very, very interesting. So anyway. Anything else? Anything on? Yeah.
I'm curious, why did you write the book?
Why did I bring it?
No, why did you write it? Like,
Oh, why did I write it?
What got you into that?
Why did I write it? Well, the main reason, two reasons. One is to shamelessly promote myself. I mean, just to be totally transparent, because it's a good way to sort of, it's one thing if you're doing a book signing. It's another thing if you're going to a library and doing a presentation, trying to whatever, shill for your own self or something like that. I mean, that's just the honest answer. I think the bigger reason is that I've read virtually every book on financial aid, and the best one that I had read, I still think it's better than mine actually. It's called How to Pay for College Without Going Broke by Calvin Chaney. It's written by I think it's published by the Princeton Review, maybe. I think that's a great book, but it's like a textbook. And I am just not predisposed to reading treatises and things like that. So I wanted to write this as a way that's not quite as comprehensive, but just more readable, more conversational. That's I've been told I pulled it off. But anyone here read this book, by the way? Nobody? Someone's gonna walk home with it tonight. It's a great sleep aid. Not you, we'll be playing at home. It's my intern. Yeah.
For the few of us who came because we want to find out about college and not because of your awesome reputation, what is the title of the book?
Thank you. Right. This is, I like the preamble, that was great. So the book is called How to Pay Wholesale for College, and it makes a great holiday gift. And it's on Amazon. Yeah. Whether that's, Rosh Hashanah or Columbus Day. Yeah. All right, so should I get going? Do you have any more? You can reserve the right to ask me more questions. That's totally fine. But anything else before I launch into these? No? All right, can I see? They're really not that legible. All right. So, how should I do this? All right, first I'm going to sit down, which is only because I'm lazy and I'm feeling like, I told you, like crap. Shut up, my echo here. Here's some of the important things that I think don't get said enough during this process by teachers, by guidance counselors, other parents, other kids, and all that. And I think what I should also point out is that a lot of the stuff that I'm going to say here tonight is definitely anywhere on the scale of different to offensive, depending on whatever comes out of my mouth, but depending on how you choose to interpret it. I'm not trying to be offensive, but it is a free workshop, so I will refund anybody who is sensitive. I'll double your admission ticket. I think the way in general that and there are exceptions, but I think in general the way that guidance counselors help kids with this process and kids themselves and families, the way they choose colleges, I think is dead wrong. And what I mean by that is you have to understand a few things. The first of which is that this has changed a lot since we were all growing up. Has anyone noticed how the schools that were really easy to get into are now ridiculously hard to get into? All the safety schools are now reach schools. And I'm talking, if you want specifics, it's not too hard to come up with them, but Northeastern University, I grew up right outside of Boston in Newton, Massachusetts, and Northeastern was, just a regular local school like Post or something. And not that I'm knocking Post, but now it's number 48 in the country. How did that happen? There's been a bunch of, a confluence of several factors, one of which is incredibly intense marketing and marketing budgets by every school. If you have someone who's a junior right now, you know that every day there's another glossy brochure of kids, featuring kids of all races and ethnicities frolicking in the courtyards, even at the schools in like northern Minnesota or Canada or near Canada or something. They're all, giggling and no one has a zit. And anyway, they all look the same, right? Well, that implies that if you go to that college, you want to back it. So, which I think is a fair promise. But Northeastern, for example, I sing a lot now because they're now 48 in the country, and every year now they send out 200,000 pieces of direct mail to get 50,000 applications to admit, 5,000 to 6,000 kids or something. So that's a big part of it. Another component is all the international students. So there's been, since we all, we're all roughly the same age, since we all graduated, there's roughly the same amount of seats available. There's been a slight increase, but the amount of kids vying for spots, particularly in Asia and the Arab Emirates and other places, who not coincidentally also pay full price, they're not eligible for aid. There's more marketing, and there's more of those, those guys coming to the United States, as well as the common application makes it very easy for you as a student to click a button and send your application out to 40 or 50 colleges, which that's a high number. I think the right number of schools, sometimes people want to know that, to apply to is 10 to 12, and I see 15, 18, 20, 22. I think it's ridiculous, but that's what the common application has done. And colleges want that because they want to attract more applications so they can reject a bunch of people and they can bump their ratings up in U.S. News and World Report. And a lot of the college selections process is done predicated on rankings. And the thing about rankings is that they're very easily manipulated. There's a great article, if you want to search it, called How Northeastern Gamed the Rankings, that came out in Boston Magazine, I think 3 years ago. And when I say manipulated, I'm talking about legal, and I'm talking about illegal or at least unethical methods to game the rankings. So, and if you want further resources on that, Google ranking scam Tulane, ranking scam Emory. A lot of GW, a lot of schools you've heard of who frankly don't need to, falsely reported certain information. So I think that's one fault in the college process is I see too much reliance on rank. And rank is, I think, I'm not saying discredit it or discount it totally, but don't stop at, if you're looking at schools and that's your only criteria, I think you're selling yourself short. I think the bigger problem is that just focusing on, and this is one thing again that's different, and this is not a sales pitch at all because I know not everyone agrees with me. I'm just trying to explain to you how I think things should be done, how we do things as a firm, and how guidance counselors and other people don't. There's too much focus on the 4 years of college, which is important, but to me, college is really about the 40 years after those 4 years. And that's one of these things that's easier said than done to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life when you're a high school kid. But you can certainly narrow it down a lot better than we do right now. And the problem to me is that what this leads to is that college is, it's not an entitlement. It's not. People treat it that way. It's not just something you do until you get out and you just pass the time by majoring in things that employers have no interest in. So you can go to college and learn nothing that's going to help you with life after college, with those next 40 years. So you can major in, you can go to UConn and major in puppetry. That's it's an extreme example, but a lot of schools have that major. Here's one that's not so extreme: marine biology. Virtually every school up and down the East Coast and the West Coast has marine biology as a major, but honest to God, when's the last time you actually met a real, live, working, making a living marine biologist who wasn't feeding Shamu, at SeaWorld, or leading a whale watch in Provincetown or something? There's not that many jobs for marine biologists. If you look at polls that employ, that when people do studies that asking questions do employers feel like the graduates are ready for the workforce? 93% say no. It's always a percentage right around there. So you combine that with all the student debt that's out there, $1.3 trillion, all the defaults, 50% of college grads do not have jobs in that require a college degree. Kids who graduate 2 years before. They're working at Starbucks and Domino's and places like that with their women's studies degree or whatever they studied, whatever they majored in. So I think that's the big issue, and there's now more people moving home after college than ever before. Student loans is the number one reason cited by millennials why they're not buying homes, why they're not starting businesses. I think it's pretty bleak. So our approach is really to focus more on the 40 years after and then backward plan. And I'm not really going to talk about that too much here, other than in the context of college should be, I think college should be thought of as an investment, not an expense. And the difference is an investment is something that, when you say that, you're implying there should be ideally a return on that investment, which means something that's greater than what you put into it. And it also means getting it for the lowest price possible, which is a lot of stuff that you guys asked me about. So I'm just going to put aside that rant, for now. But I think it's important, and I just wanted to kind of, introduce that context to you. The college process is, there's the admissions side of it, which is not most of the questions you guys asked me about. But if we have time, I can certainly talk about some of that stuff if you want. And then it's about the financial aid side and getting money for college. So I guess what I'm going to do is start with this one, just how the whole system works. So there's really two main sources of funding in this system. There are merit scholarships, which come from college endowments. A subset of merit scholarship are scholarships that come from the outside places like Rotary Chamber of Commerce and other places like that. And then there is need-based financial aid, which is awarded by the College Financial Aid Office. So the difference between the two is need-based is based on a bunch of factors, which I'll describe in some detail: income, savings, age, number of children in college at the same time, and a few other things. And merit means everything that's not need. So there's merit for great grades and scores, but there's merit for community service. Merit's sort of in the eye of the beholder. So there's a financial aid formula that dictates your need, how they calculate your financial need. Have you heard the term need-based aid ever? Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about first, and then we'll talk a little bit more about merit. So let's talk about the financial aid formula. So that's COA minus EFC equals need. COA stands for cost of attendance at college, meaning how much it costs for 1 year to go to college. So who knows how much it costs for 1 year to go to a private college, for example?
65.
65-ish. Anyone else? I see
That's the
people.
schools that we're looking at costs.
Right. Nice job. Okay. No, I mean, listen. It's what's sometimes a little funny, even though there's nothing funny about $65,000 a year, if you ask me. But there are, for the most part, the colleges are very close in cost to each other. It's almost as if they're businesses and they're checking each other's prices, or there's price fixing or something. Which, of course, I would never suggest that. But 1 year at a private college can be in the 60s, can be in the 70s, or it can be a little bit less. But that's roughly what you're looking at. If there is good news, the good news is that cost of attendance includes not just tuition, but also room and board and a bunch of other stuff. And that higher number is what the financial aid office bases its award on. It's not just the tuition, the only $50,000 tuition number. How about a SUNY cost of attendance, State University of New York, ballpark?
23.
Yeah, 23, 25. And what about an out-of-state school? Like a 45? You came here prepared.
I've done a lot of them.
Would you like a copy of my book?
Sure.
Okay. Give me one.
Including your watching one of your seminars live.
Okay.
So,
Live, of course.
and I hear you have, and I hear you have the absolute best guidance counselor for your kids.
We have a good one. We actually like our guidance counselor a lot.
I know her.
Oh, you do?
I told her.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, we actually go out of our way to say that every once in a while, because a lot of guidance counselors, sometimes I get hate mail from them Not from her, from Joanne. But I have a lot of fans too. With that. It's very interesting because they're like, yeah, I wish you come to our school in Ohio or something. It's bizarre to me. So tell her I said hi. She's great. Yeah. So that's the cost of attendance. Then the next component is EFC, or estimated family contribution. Anyone know what that term is supposed to? What the significance of it is? What it's supposed to mean? What you can pay it. Yeah, or what you can pay, or everything you got. It depends. Yeah. So the spoiler alert to you know that you brought up is that very few people are happy with the number that the government thinks that you can afford for 1 year of college. And again, it's based on a few factors that I'll try to enumerate in a bit. And then need is what's left over, your financial need. So roughly, that's the bad one. Distracted. So there are roughly 60 colleges in the country that meet 100% of your financial need. We'll do some numbers in a second. Most private colleges are somewhere around 85%, maybe 80 to 90. And most state schools meet around 55% of need, which is a clue why state schools may not always be the cheapest once you look at the total cost. Because state schools may start with a lower sticker price, but because they have lesser endowment funding, they don't always come up with the same amount of money, and therefore your out-of-pocket could be higher at a quote-unquote cheaper school. So let's just do some numbers here. Let's round down, sadly. So let's say the cost of attendance is $60,000. Let's say your EFC is $40,000, again, just for the sake of this illustration, and you're showing $20,000 worth of need. Well, at a school that means 100% of need, they're going to cover the entire amount of what you're showing as need. And what that means is they're going to give you, on average, these are all averages, $20,000. How they give it varies. That's something that that's different from school to school. But the most generous schools give either 100% or mostly free money. If it's a private college that meets, let's say, 90%, then they're not going to cover 10%. They're going to cover $18,000. They're going to give you that. So you pay the other $2,000 there, plus you always pay your estimated family contribution. So I know I'm going kind of quickly, but in the first example, you'll pay $40,000, and if 100% of need is met, you're not paying any of this part. In the second example, if you're going to a college that meets 90% of need, they'll cover 90% of this amount, $18,000. They won't cover $2,000, so you pay the unmet need plus your EFC. Question?
So does the term full ride mean 20K or 60K?
Term full ride is, to me, synonymous with like fairy tale, unicorn, or something like that. There's in this whole process, what's funny to me is that there's so much urban legend, and I hear about kids getting full ride lacrosse scholarships to Princeton, and I'll say that's really interesting because Ivy Leagues don't have athletic scholarships. And even if you were to get a lacrosse scholarship, you'd probably be looking at $5,000. Stuff like that. It's just like how on Facebook, everyone gets into the top choice school. Or if you read a lot of college applications, like I do, for my clients, apparently everyone's a leader. There are no followers applying to college today. It's fun fact. No one's a follower. Everyone's a chief, no Indian. So full ride, can mean anything. But it's usually not. It's usually you're lucky to get a full ride for tuition, not housing. So, any other questions on this? Because I know I'm just kind of moving quickly. Okay. So state school, that means 55%. They may only cover, $10,000 or something. So.
I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah.
State school, I'm going to start at 60,000 in the beginning.
It would.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But it could be $50,000.
Okay.
So I'm just using nothing.
Okay.
So one of the things you want to try to look at, and this, not everyone can pull this off, but if there's a way to lower your estimated family contribution, let's say you can, cut $10,000 off that, and now your EFC is $30,000, you'll improve your eligibility, and you'll show more need. That's sort of the name of the game for need-based financial aid planning. And these numbers really, just so you know, they're really not far-fetched, because the average discount in college this year, it goes up every year, is 48.6%. That's average, and that's a combination of need and merit. It's a discount. It's not loans. It's just a flat-out discount off the sticker price. And the other statistic is that most aid goes to families in the top 25% of earnings. So the most money goes to, like, six-figure earning families. And my favorite statistic is that 67% of statistics are made up. Yeah, that's another joke I say almost every time. So it's a crutch. So what I'm getting at is that paying full price is really more of a choice than something you're forced to do. And if you understand that there is life beyond the rear window sticker, the same schools that, at many high schools, kids get recommended the same small artificial universe of 25, 30 colleges, but there's 4,000 colleges out there. So that's another message I just want to sort of, get across and get you guys to acknowledge that you shouldn't just confine yourself to a small number just because, just because the team did well in the NCAAs or, the BCS or, something like that. A lot of kids pick school, and parents pick colleges that way. Villanova will be a really hot school this year. Applications are going to be way up because they won the men's basketball tournament last year. So that's my prediction. I'm not really going out on a limb. So any other questions on the financial needs? I want to talk about how to lower your estimated family contribution. You guys basically understand this? Okay. So let's see if this works. Yes. All right. So remember, you want to lower your estimated family contribution if you can. And there are a few, 70-odd factors, but the main ones are income and savings or assets. And there's parent stuff and child stuff. So let me just put up some numbers here. Okay, so what this reads is parent income 22 to 47%, child income 50%, parent savings 5.64%, child savings 20 to 25%. What that is supposed to demonstrate to you is that some stuff counts against you more than others, and some stuff, which we'll talk about after this, doesn't count against you at all. So what I mean by that is parent income and parent savings are penalized less in the financial aid formulas. When I say penalized, I mean will bump up your EFC. Remember, you want it lower. So penalizing will increase the amount that the financial aid office thinks you can afford. That's what I'm trying to use as synonymously. So parent income, it's a sliding scale, but if you make an extra $10,000, let's say, your EFC will be increased between $2,200 to $4,700. That's what that 22 to 47 means. But where it gets really kind of irritating, and a lot of people think it's not fair, I'm not trying to be political, but the savings component is really the nuttiest thing. It's a disincentive. If you think about it, it's a disincentive to save. It's also a disincentive for kids to work. Because if a kid works, 50% of the income will be penalized. First you pay taxes on it, so it's maybe 15, 20% or something like that. Then 50% of it is taken away from financial aid, and then the kid is thrifty enough to salt the money away into a savings account, then another 20 or 25% is removed, is penalized. So you're really left over with 15% or something if you have a kid who works and saves money. You have an incentive to sit out, basically. So the numbers here, put another way, it's like funny but not, right? It's kind of sad, right? So if you had $100,000 in your names as a parent, and we'll talk about what counts and what doesn't count, that boosts your EFC by $5,640, roughly 5%.
It boosts it or it deducts it?
So in other words, you want it to be lower. This boosts, it penalizes
Oh,
you.
okay.
Penalizes you. Yeah, boost is too positive a word. It penalizes
It's
you.
more aid.
No, the opposite. It's the opposite. Yeah.
Oh, it takes away.
You want a lower EFC.
If you have 100,000 sitting in your savings
I
account,
got it.
they're gonna say you can spend 5,000 on college.
Right. That same $100,000. So $100,000 penalizes you as a parent $5,000. That same $100,000 in your kid's name penalizes you $20,000 or $25,000. That's the big issue. So in need-based financial aid planning, some, definitely not all, some people can benefit from taking money from a bucket where it penalizes them into maybe sheltering it, not hiding, I don't like that word, sheltering is much less sleazy, taking from the guy in the t-shirt, into a place where it doesn't penalize you as much, or a place where it doesn't penalize you at all. Yes, I'll talk about that. Any questions?
Does an 401k or IRA?
Hang on to that question, I'm going to talk about that. Any questions just in general on the concept? You got the math, the arithmetic, and then I'll get into all the exceptions. Yeah?
So it sounds like if you had, just for argument's sake, you had $10,000 right now, you'd be better off keeping it in a parent's name savings account than putting it into, forgetting about the tax implication, into a 529, because in the 529, they would say, okay, 2,500 of that is free for college, whereas in a parent's savings it would only be, I guess, $500.
So just I'm going to repeat that. The question was about 529s, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, because the 529 is actually considered a parent asset most of the time, in my experience. So it meaning it penalizes you less, but I want to talk about that, and just give me a minute.
Okay, so a more literal question to you. If somebody, let's say you had grandparents said, I'm going to give you $10,000 for your kid's college, you'd actually be better off keeping it in your name than in the kid's name.
Possibly, because that's another. There's a 529 that can be opened by a grandparent, which is different. So just hang on to that. Don't let me forget that. But that's yeah. There's a lot of moving parts here.
So just to clarify, that says 22 to 47%
Yeah.
of the parent's income?
Correct,
Okay.
and that means all income, untaxed also. So
Is that percentage based on your taxable income bracket?
no, 22. Oh, I'm sorry. It's the 22 to 47% is a sliding scale. So the more you make, the higher the penalty.
Pre-tax.
Yeah, all in, all money. Even if you make the retirement contributions, that gets added back. It's part of income. So if your income is $150,000, but you put in $10,000 to your 401k to lower your taxable income by $10,000, financial aid adds it back. That's I won't even comment on that, but I guess the theory is that you get the tax deduction, you shouldn't also double dip with the Department of Education. It's one thing for the Department of Treasury, for the IRS. It's another thing to get two sets of benefits. Okay? All right, so you guys, what's that?
Gross income?
Just for the sake of this presentation, it's all in. Just, I'm oversimplifying, but it's basically all in. Okay, so you got the math? So yes? Still awake? Okay. So, all right. So let's talk about the things that don't count against you, and the stuff that does, the special situations. So, I guess before we talk about what doesn't count against you, we'll talk about what does count against you. So when they ask on the FAFSA, the question will be something like, "What's the net worth of your investments?" And then it says investments include the following, and then it also says in sort of fine print, "Do not include these." So what's included is cash. So sometimes people say, well, how do they know if I have money in my safety deposit box? And I'll say, they don't know, but you're lying on a federal form if you don't tell them that. I don't recommend it. Never one of my pet strategies to lie in a federal form where you're risking fines and jail time. Your kid goes away to college, you go away also. Your roommate is Bubba. That's the difference. Okay. So it's stocks, bonds, mutual funds, really anything that's liquid. And on the FAFSA, and we're going to talk about the two forms, it's slightly different than on the CSS Profile, which is the other form. Maybe I'll do that now. So every college in the country, remember there's 4,000, takes a FAFSA. But there are roughly 260 or so colleges that require an additional form called the CSS Profile, not in lieu of the FAFSA, but in addition to the FAFSA. And there's a third form also, it's not worth talking about in my opinion because it hasn't really caught on yet. But those are the two main forms, the FAFSA and the CSS Profile. Here's a big tip that is going to prevent some people, I hope you remember this or write this down, some people from making a mistake. You have to look at each college that on your list to figure out what forms are required. Every year we hear about stories where people forget to do that and they file one, not the other. So that's one thing. Another big thing, by the way, is deadlines. The financial aid timeline, that was a question also, it overlaps the admissions timeline, but it's different. So you may have application, college admission application deadlines, but you also have priority financial aid deadlines that vary by school. If you were to look at the main form, the FAFSA, it'll say on there the deadline to file this is June 30th. That is never your priority deadline. Your priority deadline might be October 15th, November 1st, February 1st, February 15th, March 1st. So that's another thing that messes people up a lot, is they don't look at each school's priority financial aid deadline. So if you get your forms in a day after the priority deadline, you could be totally out of luck, or you're certainly not going to get the full fair reading you were hoping for. So I just felt like that was important. Throw it in somewhere. So the FAFSA and the CSS Profile are different forms. FAFSA is about 108 questions. It comes out in October now. It used to come out in January. It now comes out in October 1st. So about 2 weeks. And what it's going to ask people about is income from what they call prior. So if you have someone graduating in 2017, prior means 2015 income. That's a change. It used to be 1 year prior, now it's 2 years prior. So again, it's a 2-year look back for income. Now, in terms of savings, the savings that's disclosed has to be accurate as of the date you file. There's no look back. So we're going to talk about moving money around, sheltering and all that. Just so you know, there's no look back the way there is for Medicaid spending, where there's a 5-year look back to get money out of a senior citizen's name, that type of thing. It doesn't work that way for financial aid. There's technically no look back period. 108 questions. This one, the profile is about 220 or so questions. Sometimes there's supplemental questions that are really, really invasive. That's the big difference between these two. The schools that use the CSS Profile tend to be the private liberal arts colleges. There are some exceptions, but the private liberal arts colleges have their own, their own endowments. So they have their own money. They're not only relying on federal money. So they ask a whole lot more just to verify you really need their own endowment. So it's mostly private schools, but University of Virginia, which is a public school, takes the profile. University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill also takes the profile. And University of Michigan, Ann Arbor takes the CSS Profile also. Most of the rest are private colleges, Ivy and other private colleges. So they calculate the EFC slightly differently. So in terms of what's included in assets, on the FAFSA, again, it's cash, stocks, bonds, but the FAFSA says, to summarize, the FAFSA says, in terms of investments, do not include your primary residence. That is exempt as an asset on the FAFSA. There's 4 exemptions, that's one of them. But the profile does ask about your primary residence because they look at it as a resource that you could tap by pulling a home equity line or something like that to pay for college. So the profile is a little bit different in that regard. Retirement accounts are exempt in both. Hold on a second, I'm plugging my phone. So 401k, 403b, step simple.
What about deferred comp plan?
So the question about deferred comp, so you mean the account?
Was it a 457B?
Yeah, that's also exempt. That's a retirement account. It's totally exempt. All that stuff. Once you derive income out of it, that's in play. That's where it's different. So the CSS profile is exempt also, but it's disclosable. It's on. Even though it's not supposed to count against you, allegedly they don't penalize you for that. The other two exemptions that do not count against you, that should not be included, are annuities. Those are exempt assets. On the FAFSA, it's all annuities. On the CSS profile, it's some annuities. It's retirement annuities only. And I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm kind of talking out of school, but what that means is that a retirement annuity is something that's qualified under the IRS code. So you can deduct it by making when you make contributions, whereas non-qualified, you don't have any tax benefits under the IRS code. And then the fourth exemption is cash value insurance. So here's the deal, just to be totally candid with you guys about all this stuff. I mentioned this a few times, but I'm starting to twitch when I talk about this stuff because I don't want people to run out of here and start moving money around and raiding their kids' accounts and things like that. But the deal is that there could be ways to improve your eligibility for financial aid, but you have to consider also the financial planning implications of doing that. Meaning, if you're pulling money out of a certain account, are there penalties? Are there tax consequences? Those can certainly drag whatever return you're hoping to get by moving money around. And then the next question is, well, where do you put that money? What type of these four exempt products or types of assets can you use? And I can tell you, again, as a non-financial advisor, but a recovering attorney. I practiced law for 5 years up until 99. What I can tell you is that I have seen probably dozens of really, really crappy products and 3 good ones. And when I say good ones, I mean products where you can't lose your money and you can get it back without fees, and you're not going to get ripped off by all sorts of weird costs. So, and that I know that changes all the time, and I work with other financial advisors just to make sure that people, my clients are being taken care of. But I'm not one, so I'm not really qualified to talk about that stuff, other than to say be very, very careful because it doesn't work for everyone. So and don't forget one of the main factors is your income. So if your penalty on your income is way too high to begin with, then it doesn't matter where you have money. You're not going to, you may, on paper, improve your estimated family contribution, but if you're lowering it from $80,000 to $70,000, who cares? I see that kind of frequently. And if that is you, don't despair, because there's actually more merit-based money out there than need-based money. I think half my clients don't qualify for need-based money, so I know that there's more merit-based out there. So that's more of a question of figuring out what pond you fish in, where do you apply, and matching up, the profile of your kid, how he or she presents to that school, and making them more desirable. It's basically a marketing exercise. So that's kind of out of the scope of today. But I don't want you to despair if you're not going to qualify for need-based money, because there's actually more merit-based money. Okay, question?
Now, I understand on the application, you need to put whether or not you will be applying for financial aid, and does that affect the possibility of getting into that school?
Sure. So the question was, when you fill out the application, there's a question to answer: do you intend to apply for need-based financial aid? So the first comment I have is, if you don't say that, that could be held against you. Meaning that I've seen that people don't get they say no because they're hoping that they're going to augment their chances of getting in, like you're asking me, and then later when they get in, they throw in their financial aid application. Oh, I forgot. Whoops. And I see responses like, well, you didn't say that on the common application, and usually they're after the deadline also, so I see those responses also. In a vacuum, it doesn't hurt. It does not help your chances to get in if you indicate you need financial aid. There's roughly 30 or 40, I think, I'm not sure, colleges that say they're need blind and they claim they don't look at that, whether a kid needs money or not. They're just judged on their merits. I think out of superstition, I would never really believe that. But to me, the bigger question a lot of the time is, well, if you are dying to go to a certain school, let's say you're applying early decision to a school because you fell in love with it. So this is a conversation I have frequently. We want to apply early decision, and I'll say, okay, well, that's great. It's probably going to help your chances of getting in, although not as much as you think, because there's a lot of self-selectivity in that, which, if you have questions, I'll talk about that. But one of the big things about applying early decision is that you don't have any other offers to potentially play off against the college that is hopefully giving you an offer. And I don't think I brought any examples today, but every year we try to negotiate with colleges, and sometimes we get zero, and sometimes we get $40,000. So I'm sorry, hang on one second. A lot of times the reason that kids apply early decision, I'll say, tell me about it. How'd you fall in love with the school? And I'll hear things like, and again, I'm not saying this to be offensive. And if this sounds like a conversation you've had with your kid, it's not, it's just coincidence. I didn't eavesdrop. But I just got a great feeling when we got there. Or I really love the way the buildings were. The tour guide was great. Or, I just felt like I belonged there. These are all actual quotes. Here's another one, actual quote. I love the way the kids dressed. That's my favorite. An SAT tutor told me that one. And I'll usually say stuff like, great, they have professors and classes and career centers and things like that there. Oh yeah, they have all the programs I want too, by the way, right? So I'm not really necessarily convinced, the kids they fall in love with schools for the right reason. I also want to point out that among schools, there's really more similarities than differences, especially when you're looking at broadly speaking, or between state schools and other state schools, or private schools and other private schools, that type of thing. So I sort of caution, for the most part, I caution against trying to play games to get in, with not checking off the box to apply for financial aid, because if you need the money and you don't indicate that you do, they're going to treat you like you don't need the money. So what good is it to get in if you can't pay for it? And the same thing with early decision. Okay, questions?
What's the timing as far as if you apply early decision? How much do you know about what financial aid you'll be offered from that?
Okay, so the question for the rest of the room and the rest of the internet is, if you apply early decision, what's the timing for the admissions and the financial aid stuff? So generally speaking, it works something like, if you have a November 1st early decision deadline, you will usually have potentially a November 1st financial aid priority deadline. And this year that means FAFSA and CSS Profile. In years past it meant only the profile. So what will happen is, if that's the date, you should hear back whether you got in December 1st, and you should get a financial aid offer a couple of days later. And then you should have a few weeks to mull over the financial aid offer and try to possibly improve it, even though you don't have any leverage. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The way that the obligations read, the early decision, contract that somehow kids sign, even though they're not of the age of majority and legally can't sign, is that they're bound to attend that school unless they can't afford it. In their opinion, you have to prove it. So most guidance counselors, not Joanne, of course. By the way, I don't even know, but I'm sure she doesn't. But most guidance counselors get a little loopy about this because they're concerned that anyone else who may apply to that school in later years might be tainted by a predecessor who, invoked the financial aid out. In my opinion, your first duty is to yourself, not to the administration of the high school. So I just wouldn't take it lightly, but you have to be aware that there'll be all sorts of pressure on you, and maybe you may not even know that you have a financial aid. I hear about that a lot also. But it's usually you apply, you get in, and then you have a few weeks, maybe a month sometimes, to negotiate or try to prove it.
But certainly when you make the decision to go early decision, you do not know, you have no idea what your financial aid offer will be.
Yeah, in general, so just to rephrase that, in general, whether it's early decision or a regular decision, you're applying to a college without having much of an idea what it's going to cost you. Now, each college has, which is comforting, right? You feel better? Because you buy a house like that, right? It's like the dumbest thing. But there are these net price calculators that each college is supposed to have on its, they do have on their websites. But the main flaw, there's two main flaws. One is that they don't each require the same information. There's no standardized way to collect that. So, for example, some schools will ask about income, some schools will ask about income plus retirement contributions, which is the correct way. And the other flaw is, sort of that they don't help you figure out if you can qualify for more money somehow by this type of stuff. So, but it's a good starting point. I recommend everyone looks at the net price calculators. Okay, question? Yeah.
So you're kind of alluding to, I thought maybe the offers would be the best and final offer kind of thing, but you're alluding to a negotiation process. So what does that look like and how do you do it?
Okay, negotiations. So the question was, when you get that offer, is that a final offer? You were thinking before, I guess I spoke, that they were giving you the highest and best offer. But colleges are businesses. And again, if you doubt, anyone doubts that, besides the marketing, go tour a school and see, the amenities that they offer. I went toured a school recently and seen where the kids, work out, or the $18 million aquatic facility, and they're all building new Starbucks and new Chick-fil-A's and new, it's like that. The tours are hilarious because they're all like the same. But they have salaries, presidents who make deep 6 and 7 figure salaries and all that. So they're businesses. That's my point. And something I always tell my clients is, and kids, this kind of sometimes it freaks them out a little bit. This is another point of differentiation, is that whether or not you realize it, you as a parent or a kid, you're in business for yourselves too. Because you are a product in the eyes of the college. You might be one of 5,000 kids with the same grades and scores who's applying, and your task is to say, this is why I'm different. So I was talking about this last night. I know I turned some people off, but I was saying, let's say you go to CVS and you're buying toothpaste, and there's 5 shelves, and half of them are made by Colgate, and 30% by Crest, and whatever. How do you pick? They're all about the same price. They all promise same stuff, I should say. Maybe Tom's of Maine is different, right? So, but otherwise they're all the same. And that's the college application process, and you have to understand that you are marketing yourself. It is a marketing exercise. It is not a meritocracy only. Grades and scores are important. And by the way, I'm going to circle back to your question, but this is like a mini rant that I think gives the context to it. Grades and scores are very important to get in, but at the most competitive schools, like Ivies and other competitive schools, grades and scores count for roughly only 60% of the equation. So what I mean by that is there's a whole lot of institutional goals that colleges have that don't necessarily overlap your own goals of getting in, or your own thoughts that it should be a meritocracy. So I'm already laughing because last night this was so awkward. I'll explain. I'll say the same thing I said last night, and I'll tell you why it was awkward. So, roughly 2/3 of any incoming class and most of the competitive colleges is reserved for non-academic purposes. So what I mean by that is different special categories. You've got recruited athletes, you've got international students, you've got underrepresented minorities. You've got legacy, people whose parents went there, and a few other things. And the point is that if you're not in one of those special categories, you have to work a lot harder. So what I said last night was, if you happen to be a plain old white guy or white girl, and you're applying, and everyone in the audience had their mouth open because in the front row were 2 African American people. And I said that, and I said, listen, and people were like, I'm like, look, I'm not racist. I really like white people. I think everyone should have a white friend. And the African American lady just started laughing hysterically. Everyone else was silent. They were like all afraid. It was like the most politically incorrect thing. Yeah. So when she started laughing, they all laughed. I thought, I do little things to amuse myself, and I say the same stuff over and over again, month after month. Anyway, the point is that those special categories tend to bring the averages down in terms of grades and scores and all that. So if you're looking at Naviance, everyone know what Naviance? Anyone not know what Naviance is? Just raise your hand. Naviance too? Okay. So, but you know, right? Because she's the primary parent, you're just the guy. Okay.
So to show up. So.
Yeah. Wow, my family doesn't work like that. So for those of you who don't know, Naviance is an addictive software that mostly the moms, not always, will go on several times a day or whatever during junior year to hint. And I have a Navaholics Anonymous group I'm starting in case you think you're eligible, you can apply. But what it does is handicap your chances of getting into certain schools, but it's flawed. And the flaws have to do with all the stuff I'm talking about. So Naviance looks at your grades and your scores, and then it compares you to other kids from your high school who've gotten in over the last 3 years or something. The flaws are that grades and scores, maybe 60%. That's not coming from me. That's coming from a colleague of mine, a mentor, who was on the admissions committee at Princeton for 30 years. He's like the burning bush for me. I'm constantly peppering him with questions. And the rest of the story is you're not competing with kids only from your high school. You're competing with kids all over the world. There's no quotas in high schools, although people think that. You're compared to kids in your high school. You're not competing for slots. You're competing with kids all over the world. So, so if a school says it admits 10%, and you're not one of the special categories, your real rate of admission is probably like 5%. It's a lot harder, and it's getting harder because there's more and more international students coming in. That's what I want to get across there. So anyway, so the colleges have their own agendas, and they are businesses, and they don't always get their highest and best offers. So one of my favorite pet strategies to help you succeed in a negotiation with the college, I told you I would come back to it, is it's like a steel trap. I mean, no, I just saw you looking at it. Is that I'd love to solicit offers, competing offers from competing colleges, meaning schools that compete with each other. This process is not only about kids chasing schools around, taking the ACT 15 times and running track because they hate to sweat and doing all sorts of crazy extracurricular activities to look good for college. Has Joanne ever talked to you about that type of thing? The extracurriculars that some kids do just to look good for college?
No.
I heard the best one from a client of mine in the 5 towns. Apparently there was a kid who, to look good for college, it doesn't work by the way, I'm just telling you, spoiler alert, took trapeze lessons. Right? I can't make this up. Sorry, it really happens. Anyway, I could do 2 hours on that. It's the most idiotic thing, but it's hilarious. Usually it's like the mom who creates the special project for the kid. I call it the born again junior phenomenon. When a kid who's had shown no charitable any interest at all for 2 years, all of a sudden they're a junior, and the mom's like, "Oh my God, we have to do something. You don't have any extracurriculars. You're going to do a 3-on-3 basketball tournament to fight autism." Okay. Or something like that. And then the mom does it, and the kid doesn't do it. And that's actually fact-based. I changed some of the facts. But your friend and my guidance counselor would know about who I'm talking about. But that happens in every district, that type of stuff. So anyway, so they're in business. Kids are in business. There's all sorts of crazy stuff that people do to make themselves look good that doesn't necessarily work. Anyway, colleges that compete with each other, I think it's, you have to remember that their business is they're trying to fill their seats. So if you get offers from schools that are in the same conference or compete with each other in other ways, and school A gives you a lower offer and school B gives you a higher offer, you show that one. I can kind of walk you through that, but that's generally one of the things I think is really important to do. There are other reasons that you can, other ways to improve offers. If there's some sort of mistake that was made, or if there's a story behind the black and white numbers, that non-formulaic stuff that's important. You can try to bring those out. Those generally are something awful that happened, like a divorce where you just piled up a lot of debt, paying lawyers, or you got sick and the medical expenses weren't covered, things like that that are extraordinary. You lost income, the business that you owned went south, or you got laid off from a job after your tax returns were filed, or at the end of the year, so the tax return income number looks kind of high artificially, but the reality is much less because you're not working. Those types of things, non-formulaic things, are usually some of the best arguments that will help you appeal, not negotiate, but appeal for more money. That reminds me, I didn't mention this. So there's all these factors for figuring out your estimated family contribution, income, savings, age, and all that. The one thing that's not included is expenses. That's the nuttiest thing, one of the nuttiest things, maybe the nuttiest thing of all about this process, is that you can have two families, one's living in like Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and maybe another one's living in the North Shore of Long Island, and they can look the same financially, income, savings, etc. They'll have the same estimated family contribution. That's what's crazy. Even though the cost of living here might be double or more. So you want to hear about how to negotiate a little bit more?
Yeah.
So let me let me just kind of knock it off one by one. So let me talk to you about a mistake. So if you made a mistake, sometimes that can be correct. It's not really negotiation, but sort of in that the cousin of negotiating. So we had a client also actually in our district who we didn't know them, but she filled out the financial aid forms herself, didn't get any money. Her kid got into NYU and a bunch of other schools, and she called me up because she was referred by someone, and she said, I think I made a mistake. Can you help me? I said, well, you know what? I mean, it's like the end of April. I don't know what I can do because your forms went in February and the process is basically over. And she said, well, I really think that we made a mistake here. Can you just, I'll just pay you to take a look at them. So I looked at her forms, and what I noticed is that she is self-employed. And this is actually the 5th exemption. Remember I talked to you about some of the other stuff that doesn't count in financial aid? So we talked about your primary residence on the FAFSA, talked about insurance, annuities, and retirement accounts. Anyone here self-employed? For show of it? Okay, one meaning owns a business. Sometimes people confuse it. So only one lonely guy? Yeah, that's me and you. It's very glamorous for those of you who are not self-employed, right? I think it's fair to say. Very glamorous being, it's like Donald. Yeah. International. Okay. So for those of you thinking about it. So her issue was that when she filled out her financial aid forms and she got to the question, what's the value of your business? Her mistake was she used a common sense, real world value as opposed to a financial aid value. So in her case, she and her husband own a contracting business. They have all sorts of equipment and all sorts of stuff. They do the excavation work for Nassau County. It's a pretty substantial business, and every year, because she's got these equipment lenders, they have to disclose all sorts of financial information, and she files financial statements. She used the value on that to put down on the FAFSA. And I asked her a few questions, one of which was, how many employees do you have? And the reason I asked her that is because on the FAFSA, it says in that fine print, if you employ less than 100 employees, I'm paraphrasing, the value of your business is 0. She employed 17 people. I said, okay, that's a big reason why you didn't get any money. There was a few other things, but that was really the main one. And in her case, 3 years ago, we corrected it and we resubmitted, even though it was well past deadline, and NYU went from 0 to $25,000. And the following year, they gave her another $25,000. So, correcting a mistake, whether you're self-employed or not, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. It's always worth a shot. The negotiation, I think, is it's really my favorite thing to do, actually. So I had a client, I talk about them every once in a while. Anyone know Port Washington and know the Wings restaurant in Port Washington, Wings Plus? Just saying. So I only bring this up not to brag. I get $5 off. Jealous? Contain yourselves. But the reason I get $5 off is because Rick, the owner, who gave me permission to talk about him, loves me because I helped him get an extra $30,000 per year from USC. I'm better at negotiating with colleges than with clients. I don't know if that's equitable, really, the $5 versus the $30,000. But I'll walk you through that example. So when his daughter was a junior, when I started working with them, she had identified USC as her top choice school because she was interested in communications. So I said, I want to pick some other schools that compete with USC. And she said, well, what do you mean, like UCLA or Pomona? And I said, no. I want to also pick schools, I want to look at schools that also have communications programs like Syracuse, Newhouse, and a few others, and let's throw in some applications there too. So fast forward to her senior year, she's thrilled because she gets into USC, and she gets an offer of like $23,000, which, you know, would seem nice in the abstract, but USC has always been a very expensive school, and that wasn't nearly enough, you know, for Rick, her dad, to be able to send her. So she did, of course, get other better offers from other colleges, which, you know, so what we did was, you know, I always have like a template, so I use that to outline a letter with Rick, and I sent it to him. He edited it. I took one more look at it, and we sent it in. We sent it by email and by hard copy also. But he didn't do everything I told him to do, which we didn't find out for a couple of weeks, and we were approaching that May 1st deadline, which was the when you put your housing deposits in. So in the interim, he hasn't heard anything back. His daughter's crying every morning. It's, you know, in her room. He's telling me this. I'm saying, dude, I don't have feelings. Shut up. No. I was like, okay, let's just go through my checklist one more time. And the summary of that conversation was, did you do this? Yes. This, yes. Did you send a copy of the letter to admissions? And he's like, no, I forgot.
Which letter?
The appeal letter. Yeah. And he said, no, I forgot. Immediately, and he admitted that. I got him on video. I really do. So, I wish I was joking, but I'm not. Yeah. So anyway, the way he tells the story, you got a call that day. By the way, I think it's actually after May 1st. You got a call that day from the admissions officer who said, I didn't know anything about this. Who are you working with in financial aid? He goes, I don't know. I've never heard back from anyone. And she asked him a couple of questions and told him, I'm going to march this letter down to, you know, Chuck or whatever, the right guy in financial aid. And the next day, he got a call from the right guy in financial aid who asked him a few questions, mostly to do with the value of his house. And lo and behold, they bumped the offer from $23,000 to $53,000. And I really think it was because we had that other offer in our hip pocket. That's the one thing that I think happens the most. That's the common denominator that I see the most. Another client, and that's a, you know, so sometimes we get zero. I'm not saying this happens all the time. Another client, the kid got into Harvard, not just that, and he gets in Harvard and Yale are only need-based, and they only look at the CSS profile. They claim they don't look at any other circumstances other than your financial circumstances. So gets into both, and Harvard gives him $30-something thousand, and Yale zero, goose egg. Weirder. Mom's freaking out, and you know we're talking about it, and the thing was that both mom and dad were Yale alums. So that's odd. And what's even stranger is the dad was, I think he still is, an adjunct professor at Yale. They live in the city, but you know he commutes up there a couple times a week to teach a class. So she's like, you know, what happened? And I said, I don't know, did you piss someone off? And I couldn't possibly fathom, you know, what she could have done. So same thing. We sent the letter, and I said, make sure this goes to admissions also. And she goes, wow, admissions? I never would have thought of that. You're brilliant. And I was like, yeah, you went to Yale, honey. Because I went to Wesleyan, where half the class was rejected by Yale. So there's like 3 seconds where I felt superior to her. Anyway, so same thing with them. Yale came back and reassessed their need-based award from zero to like $39,000. It's ridiculous. There's no logical explanation other than they saw the other offer. So the letters are generally, you know, there's really no magic to them other than, you know, being very nice and cordial as opposed to entitled and bratty. Thank you very much for considering my financial aid application. Not holy, you know what orifice do you think I'm pulling this money out of? Are you guys nuts? What drugs are you on? You know, you can't do that. You know, we're very grateful for the offer. However, also concerned with our ability to afford to send Rachel, Ryan, whatever your kid's name is. There's probably some Rachels and Ryans here. Logan, to his or her top choice college. And that's important to say because you're going to, like I said, include admissions. So we did get these other offers that we're attaching so you can see them. If there's any way at all possible for you to reassess our award, we're only considering these other colleges because we're being forced to for economic reasons, not in any way because we want to go there. So please, if there's any way you can exceed these other offers, we're 100% to attending, whatever the school is. And you send it to admissions because they're not the bean counters the way that the financial aid office is. Admissions cares about something called the yield. Sometimes people have heard that phrase, sometimes not. The yield is the ratio of kids who are admitted versus who actually matriculate. And the higher that yield, the more the higher the rank generally. I mean, it doesn't quite work like that, but the better it is for the school. So admissions monitors that. That's their main number. They care about applications in, and they care about the yield. Kids who they admit compared to kids who are like thanks but no thanks. So that I think that's why it works. So again, it's a business. It's a business transaction. You have to approach it like that. Otherwise, they're going to walk all over you. Any questions on negotiating? Yeah.
So it sounds like you're reserving that for only when that is the place you want to go for no other reason, and that you're kind of committing yourself, assuming they need or.
In other words, the question was, are you committing yourself in any way or whatever? I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say you're my top choice school to 6 different colleges. You want to do it in good faith and all that. Do they check with each other? I don't really think so, but it's a small community. You never know. I have 2 admissions officers who work for me. They're each from the University of Chicago. They seem to know a whole lot of other admissions officers from other people, other places. So I just, I'm a conspiracy theorist. Question?
All this negotiation is done by letter or do it face to face?
Yeah. So the negotiation, how do you do it? So I prefer doing it by writing because they always want to see something. A lot of times they have forms to fill out. So Cornell has a form that says, check off the box that applies to you. 1, unexpected drop in income. Expenses. 3, another offer from another Ivy League college or MIT, Duke, I can't remember, some other schools like that. So they usually want it in writing. You can call behind it, make sure they got it, establish some sort of rapport, if you can, with the financial aid office. Sometimes people do it face to face, but I don't. Usually it's got to be at least in writing, and then maybe something else. All right. So any other questions on negotiation? I just want to make sure I wrap off everything here. No. So we talked about savings. 529, just to flesh that out, is generally now considered a parent asset, which is better than a child asset. However, in my belief, I cannot prove this, so it's not a published formula. FAFSA has a published formula that, yes, I've actually read. It's like 1,100. Well, the formulaic part of it is about 45, 50 pages, but the regulations are about 1,100 behind 108 questions. I've not read every one of the 1,100 pages. I'm not that dorky. But the FAFSA treats the 529 as a parent asset, federal rules, which is a change since 2009. But the CSS Profile doesn't publish a formula. It's called the institutional methodology. And I just have a suspicion that, not just me, but other of my colleagues in other parts of the country, that they still treat the 529 as a child asset in some cases. So if you have a 529, it may not be in the best place to position you for maximum financial aid. If you're going to consider moving it, again, I'm starting to twitch, keep in mind there's a penalty on the earnings. So bad news, good news might be earnings, but there's no penalty or minimal. And there's, in the case of a grandmother at 529, I think I mentioned that before, or grandfather at 529, that actually doesn't appear anywhere. So that's not a parent asset, it's not a child asset. It's a grandparent asset. So that's nowhere on the FAFSA. CSS Profile has a question, do you anticipate any help from friends or family? Do you know the answer to that question, by the way? No, you don't know? Oh, the answer's no? Okay. So this This is how I answer it, and you may want to write this down. Ready? I am an orphan. Or test tube baby, or if you're feeling very aggressive, maybe. No. So to me, the real way, and you have to govern yourselves accordingly, use your own litmus tests. But the way I look at this is, if you've got a promise, I got money set aside for the kid, don't worry, Uncle Tony or whatever. That does not, to me, rise to the level of anticipated help. If you have a check that cleared, yeah, that's the way I look at it. So, I don't know why that question is on there, except it's to trick you. The CSS Profile is a product of the College Board, who you probably know as the manufacturer, or the people, the good folks behind the what? SAT, right? That tortures and tricks kids. But technically, by the way, I always forget this. Technically, the CSS Profile, because it's from the College Board, gets. So your kid's supposed to answer questions like, do you anticipate help? As well as, what's the value of your parents' house? What do they pay for it? What is their mortgage payment? What is the net? What is the value or the net worth of their investments? How much can they afford for 1 year of college? These are all kid questions. Here's a tip: don't let your kid. You know the rest. Okay. So anyway, any questions on the 529? So the thing about just to round out that discussion about the grandparent 529 is that it doesn't appear as an asset anywhere, but once that money is used to go into the college, 50% of that money is the penalty. You boost your EFC by 50% of that contribution. So what a lot of people that I see, a lot of my clients do, is they try to hold off on sending that money into the college until the last year after you've done your last FAFSA, if you can. So if the grandparent has a 529 and sends in $20,000 to the college, the EFC will get boosted. You'll be penalized half of that, $10,000. So it counts as income for financial aid purposes.
Instead of using a quarter of it each year, use the other money in the first 3 years and use all of the 529 in the last year.
Correct. Yeah. Use the if you can, delay the use of the 529 until the last year. Question.
So the 529 is a parent asset, but it might not be.
529, generally speaking, is under the federal rules is treated as a superstitious person, deeply suspicious, because it's just no other explanation in some cases that the 529 is still treated as a child asset by some CSS Profile colleges. It's a crapshoot. I don't have all the answers. Do my best. All right. Any other questions on that? Okay, so do that. How financial aid works, I think we talked about that. Private versus state. Again, state schools don't have as nearly the same type of endowment as private colleges, but what I'll tell you is that more and more state schools are looking for out-of-state residents and even out-of-the-country residents by luring them with merit offers. Because state schools have seen, pretty much every state school has seen its funding dry up from each, from their respective state governments. So what they've done to make up that shortfall is try to get more out-of-state kids in who pay higher tuition prices. Even if they discount slightly, they're still ahead of the game compared to residents. So University of Wisconsin-Madison just this summer announced that they are now going to be doing more of that than they have been doing in the past for out-of-state and, frankly, in-state kids, because they were sick and tired of their students being poached from other Big Ten schools in the neighboring Midwestern states. So they're giving more merit to out-of-state students. University of Vermont gives a lot of merit to out-of-state students. University of South Carolina is another one of the schools that bribes out-of-state students. CU Boulder, Colorado Boulder is another one that does that. So I think that's a trend that's going to continue. Family size, okay, this is a big one. So EFC, let's say, getting back to EFC, let's say you do all this stuff, income and assets and all that, and you have one kid in college, and your EFC is $30,000. Once your second child, if you have overlap, then maybe 2 years later, another kid goes to college, that EFC gets split between, or in some cases, among the 8 kids in college. because they family contribution. So sometimes what happens is families in year one who have a high income or something and they don't qualify at all, they just give up. But in year three, if another kid comes into college, they would be eligible, but they leave money on the table unnecessarily. So if you have multiple, so the woman with 10 kids, I have a client with quintuplets. I thought that was crazy. Now I'm rethinking that. But anyway, kids in college at the same time, not other kids in high school, not about to go to college, not in private high school, kids in college at the same time, that's a big deal.
Wait, before you move on.
Yeah.
Part of that question was, what happens if the children who are still in high school have savings account that's in their name or in their parents' name for them? Like, does that come into play?
So the question is, what about high school kids and their savings? And the answer is, on the CSS FAFSA, no. It's not a parent asset, it's nowhere. On the CSS profile, there's a question about money in the names of siblings who are younger than 19. So it comes into play there on the profile. Yeah. Okay, good on that one. House, mortgage, so again, for the FAFSA, the house is not a factor. Primary residence. Investment properties, all secondary homes, are assets for both the FAFSA and the profile. On the FAFSA, primary residence is exempt, so it doesn't matter if you have a mortgage or not. CSS profile, if you have a mortgage, if you borrowed more, you reduce your equity and you improve your eligibility for financial aid potentially. Sometimes what people do, this is even more rare than all the stuff I was saying before, sometimes people will mortgage the home and take proceeds out and put it in one of those exempt instruments, so they have they have created their own fund, but it's not part of the financial aid, it's off the balance sheet for financial aid purposes. That's an advanced strategy and the stars have to align to make that work. But that's one thing that I've seen, maybe 2 or 3 clients of mine per year at most will do something like that. Question?
Could you just go over that one more time? A home with no mortgage and money sitting in the bank.
So,
a home with a mortgage.
So let me do this here. So here's a theory, okay, there's flaws, I'll go over the flaws. But the theory is that you have a house and you've got, let's call it $100,000 worth of equity in there that you're being penalized for. And the idea is that in some cases what you could do is take that out and put it in something that is, an insurance product or something that's exempt. And what you do is you're improving, if you look at the cost also, that's one of the big flaws with this, but you're improving your eligibility by, $5,000 per year. And the idea is that you can, if you need to use this money, you're creating your own college fund and you can pull the money out and use it to pay for college. It's like your own personal, prepaid, 529 basically, except without all the restrictions. But the flaws are that, and this is, again, I see a lot of flaws. Maybe the mortgage payments are too high to do this, or you do something stupid with the money, like and you lose value, or whatever else. But when it works in its purest form, and it really can work, what happens is instead of the school telling you, we're going to penalize you for this no matter what you do, you're telling them on your own terms, no, I'm not going to let you penalize me because I'm not consuming my equity, I'm just putting in another box.
And that is for a primary residence, so if you already...
Well, you really can do it anywhere, but that's, I see it with a primary residence, but it could be any real estate.
No, I meant, currently we have a mortgage. Wouldn't be like as we took a second, like a...
So the question is...
home or something like that.
This could be used any type of real estate that's being looked at, whether it's primary or not. This could work if you crunch the numbers. Sometimes that's the hardest thing. They don't bear out, but it's something to consider. Yeah.
My question was slightly different. It wasn't putting money into qualified.
Yep.
It was a home with a mortgage and an equivalent amount of money just sitting as an asset in cash, compared to using that money to pay off the mortgage.
So the question is, what about paying off the mortgage? Does that help? So for FAFSA schools, yes. For all other schools, no, because the house is considered an asset. For CSS profile schools, so you're penalized as if it's cash. Now that's an oversimplification, just to be fair. Some schools will cap the amount they penalize you for. So if you had $500,000 in equity, they may only penalize you on $200,000 or something like that.
So
at
the
theirs.
FAFSA
Is that,
doesn't-
sorry, is that,
So FAFSA does not count the mortgage against the.
doesn't count the house. They want to know anything about the house, the value of the house, or
The house disappears.
yeah, it's just not part of it. If you include the value of your house, you're sabotaging yourself
Right.
because it doesn't belong in the FAFSA. It's for all the other schools, CSS Profile schools. So you had a question that I saw.
Well, I mean, it was related to that. So they're not looking at expenses at all.
No.
So whether you have a mortgage payment or not, doesn't mean anything.
I'm sorry, to be clear, that is on the CSS
Yeah,
profile,
yeah.
that you disclose that.
Right.
But that's not going to help you.
No, yeah, I understand. But on the FAFSA, it's not looked at it.
Nope, exactly. There was one I saw, no, good, okay. I see some murmuring, okay. So that, yeah, I think we covered this for sure. Scholarships, and I think we covered timing too. So scholarships, my final comments about scholarships are that the websites that people go on, like CapEx and Scholly, SCHOLLY, and you name it, they are time consuming, to be frank. I don't know anyone personally who has gotten significant money from spending days, hours, weeks, and months doing that stuff, but I always hear about that. So I'm not saying don't do that, but be prepared to spend a lot of time to turn up scholarships that don't really, that you don't qualify for. I have, in our practice, we have a scholarship strategy person who figures out with the kids what they're going to qualify for and narrows that list all the way down. But that takes a lot of work. Just, I don't want to mince words. It's extra essay writing, it's interviewing, it's a lot of stuff. In addition to the college application process, which is a huge pain in the butt. So those are for outside scholarships. Again, from Kiwanis Chamber of Commerce. There's a lot of community service stuff, a lot of stuff through employers. There's a lot of sources of money out there. Your guidance counselor publishes a list. Everyone here should be familiar with the list of the guidance counselor has. A sneaky thing that we recommend a lot is why not look at the websites of other high schools? Why not? Everything's in play. So you might be able to pick up $2,000 or $3,000, $5,000, from 6 different scholarships. The one thing to be aware of, though, is that if you also qualify for need-based money, those scholarships count as resources that can actually reduce your need-based award. So all that effort might be for naught. If you're not going to qualify for need-based aid, go for it. Go for the scholarships. Don't worry about it. If you are going to qualify for need-based aid, it's a risk. Hopefully what happens is you get the loan component reduced and they still give you the free money, because when a school gives you an award, it's usually a combination of both. Question?
So is there a way to do it, the back of the napkin calculation to judge whether or not you're going to be able, whether or not you qualify or not, so you know whether or not you need to put in the work?
Right, so the question is the best way to do an estimate of whether you're going to qualify. Look at the net price calculators. That's the place to start. That's of course something I can help you with also, but if you're going to do it on your own, I would look at the net price calculators. Absolutely. Question?
So if you get scholarships, which are usually awarded after you have to send in your FAFSA, how do schools find out that you got it?
Schools will ask you, did you get any outside funding? You have to
Okay.
report it. You're
Well,
obligated to report it.
But what happens if you don't get it until February or March? After
Still
you've already
report
had-
it, yeah.
Oh, you have to report it after.
Yep, so you have to report it no matter what.
Okay, and do they ever, I know they're doing prior now with the new October 1st deadline, but do they ever ask for updated taxes for the current year, like the 2016?
Right, so if you have someone graduate in 2017, the question is, are they going to, in addition to 2015, look at 2016 taxes? And the answer is, for the CSS Profile schools, yes. For the FAFSA schools, so far, they're saying no. I don't know if I'm going to really, I don't know if I believe that.
Is there a list of which schools, or you have to go to the particular school?
Is there a list of schools that take
Yes.
the profile, for example?
Yes.
There is on the College Board website, but I would prefer you went to each college, because I've seen mistakes on the College Board website. Not only schools that are on that should be, or schools that are off that should be, and deadlines. So it's there's human error. Yes.
You don't complete both, right? You do one or the other.
No, if you are applying to a school that requires the profile, that's in addition to. It's both. It's not in lieu of. It's in addition to.
Okay. And
the forms have to jive with each other too. They can't be different. That's because a lot of forms get verified. Some schools will verify, which means a light audit. They will verify 100% of financial aid applications. The federal target is 33%, but it's usually in between. So you have to be very careful. The rest of the scholarships, the big money comes from the college endowments themselves. And those are, there's more merit money out there than need-based money. And my general rule of thumb for a college that, if you're going to look for schools that offer merit scholarships, the general rule is that if you are in the top 25% in terms of grades and scores compared to last year's class, you're much more likely not only to get in, but to get money. So then sometimes the questions are, well, I don't want to go to a school like that, it's so easy to get into, and I didn't work this hard in high school, blah, blah, blah. And my answer was always something like, okay, that's fine, but let's get these offers. At the very least, you'll get offers from some schools. Focusing on where you go to school, and again, the rear window sticker, to me that's all the short game, and the long game is what's next. So for example, if you're going to grad school, there's a very strong argument for going to the easier undergrad school because you're more likely not only to get money, but to get a higher GPA, and so much of grad school admission is predicated on your GPA. So and there's other intangibles in terms of getting to know your professors and things like that. So that's kind of a source of tension that sometimes between parents and kids, and particularly high achieving kids who feel like they're selling it out. And I try to explain to them, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, that listen, the reason that they're bribing you to come with the full ride or whatever or close to it is because you worked your butt off and you deserve it. So there's no easy answer to that one, but I think setting expectations is the right way. But if you're looking for merit scholarship money, it's generally going to come from a school that's lucky that's lucky to have you, not a school that you should beg, borrow, steal, scratch and claw your way into, for sure. And then the other thing, just before I take your question and we wrap up here, is that I have variations of this conversation a lot. So I have a client who works in a neighboring school district in the administration, and her daughter got into Brown off the wait list. She was an all-star kid. She was, just incredibly bright and all that. She got into a couple of other Ivies. So before the summer, I was asking her, so how is Julia doing, at Brown? And she said, you know what? She got the first C of her life that she'd ever received, and she was lucky to get it because she thought she failed the class. And I said, that's great. I don't think that was the wrong choice for her at the school, but sometimes you go for you set these goals, and then you get there, and the reality doesn't match up the romanticized, story you started telling yourself. So I think that's short game versus long game. I think the long game just shouldn't be blown off. It's got to be considered also. Do you have a question?
With the merit scholarships, does that work similarly as if the school offers you $30,000, but now you have received multiple other scholarships? Would they reduce that based upon other scholarships that you won, whether it's say the PTA scholarship or
right? Merit scholarships do not get reduced from outside resources, only need-based. And what I thought you were going to ask me, by the way, these are evaluation forms. I just want to hand these out. Please, you're filling out. In terms of negotiations, it's actually easier, I think, in many cases, to go back to negotiating a merit scholarship offer than a need-based scholarship. So, Pell. Question is, what's the Pell Grant? That is a low-income driven, Pell Grant is a low-income driven grant from the government. Usually you have to make about a maximum of $50,000 to get a Pell Grant. I have business cards up here too, if anyone wants them. So I want to tell you about, I got maybe 5 more minutes with questions before they kick us out of here. If you have, and this workshop was very similar to every other one that I do, you get a lot of great questions. I know this is scratching the surface here. If you want to talk to me one-on-one about your own situation, which happens most of the time with these presentations, normally when people don't go to presentations, we charge a fee for a conference call. We call it a college strategy session of $249 for that. However, anyone who attends a workshop, especially when I'm doing it at a public library, we waive that fee. The only catch, if you want to call it that, maybe you're waiting for one, is that you just have to book it. We won't talk in the next week, but you just got to get on my calendar the next week, because I'm doing a lot of these presentations. We're already slammed. I almost canceled tonight because who cares? It doesn't matter. So you can either check off on that box, on that sheet there, and turn it back in. We'll email everyone out. You can also, if you're feeling anxious right now, you can go to you can book me at booklockwood.com. You can get on my calendar right now if you want on your smartphone, or you, like I said, just take a card or return that sheet. And then typically the things that people talk to me about, you can probably guess, are along the lines of, okay, so can we qualify for anything, or are we stuck paying full price? Are we in the sucker pile? 25% of people pay full price, give or take. 75% don't. So the question is, what pile do you want to be in? Can we help you, get out of the full price pile into the subsidized pile? Are we even looking at the right colleges? Can my kid get in anywhere? Help, we don't know the right questions to ask. Where it's overwhelming. Whatever you want to talk about, there's no structure or format. It's your call. And what happens at some point, toward the end, is I'll tell you whether I think you'd be a good fit for something that we offer. We have a few different programs. Sometimes we're just preparing financial aid forms. Sometimes we're coaching kids through the whole process. Sometimes in junior year, sometimes the earliest 9th grade, which I think is kind of freaky early, but those kids usually have older siblings who kind of messed up the process. So the parents are like, I'm never doing that again. So anyway, it's whatever you want to talk about, but I'd say roughly a third of the people that I speak to, I can't help for one reason or another, and if that's the case, I'll tell you that also. So I try to make it as casual and as informative as possible, so please take advantage of that. It's free if you book me within the next week. We won't probably talk within the next week because my calendar's so crazy, but get on the calendar. Either by filling out the application, the blue sheet, or going to booklockwood.com. Any questions on that or anything? College related.
Are IRAs considered retirement accounts, not like that?
IRAs are retirement accounts. They're exempt. They're exempt.
So if you were to advise someone whether to take their money, put it in an IRA, put it in a 529, or put it in a grandparent 529, in terms of getting the most financial aid down the road.
Right. What would I do?
Yeah.
Where would I advise someone to put money?
Yeah.
As a non-financial advisor?
As a non-financial advisor.
Yeah. I think the 529 would be the last place I would advise.
Yeah.
And I would be looking at either retirement or probably I would tell someone to look at insurance products or something else. But not anything exempt. But definitely not a 529. Because the question with the 529, just to be clear, is not whether it penalizes you, it's how much.
Right.
I mean, and plus there's performance issues, that they haven't necessarily been all they've been cracked up to be. Plus it's very restricted on how you can use it. You can only use a 529 for qualified higher education expenses. So I'm not, but just to be clear also, the other side of the coin is I am not bashing the 529 at all. I mean, there are families who make, whatever, $1 million a year that we have as clients. And I'm like, those are great for you because you get the deduction. You might get a deduction. So they're not, they're not good or bad. It just depends on the situation. Yes?
So you said approximately 200 out of 4,000 schools do use the CSS. Is there some...
I believe I said 260.
260. Is there some characterization of who they are? Is it Ivy League? Is it...
It's 260 Ivy League. No, it's there's only 8. I think I said this. Generally, the liberal arts colleges that are sort of the private ones that have their own money, but UVA, Michigan, and UNC are public schools that I know of off the top of my head that use the profile also. It's generally the liberal or private arts schools on the Northeast, occasionally in the West Coast. Yeah.
So once we do this whole process, and our children start school next September, for the ones who are seniors, does that mean we immediately have to start the process again for the following year while they're just starting the new year?
So the question
on your last
was,
seminar, you talked about a student who didn't send all his emails to his parents.
May I have your attention, please? The library will be closing in 15 minutes.
That's a lot of time.
At this time, please finish up all photocopying, printing, selections of materials. The library will be closing in 15 minutes. Thank you.
anyone have any past due books? You can get the fines waived if you.
So the example was that you would help them, the child did not give the access to parents' emails, so everything goes to parents, to the child.
Oh, yeah.
And then they didn't get their financial aid for the following year.
God.
So when do you have to
Great.
start that process for the second year?
Great point. So you made a couple of points there. One is that a lot of the communication from the colleges about financial aid and a lot of other stuff goes to the kids. Because you have the privilege of paying the bill, but you're in the dark about everything else. So monitor or set something up where you're making sure that you're in the loop with your kid, all the communication. So that's a side note, but that's really, really important.
Well,
and
you
then,
said it. Yours said it.
well, yeah, we say it, but it's all based on stuff that we've seen happen. So it's not like original ideas. It's just stuff that we're sort of like in the trenches, seeing all this stuff. And so the other question was, what happens when you're a returning student? You're going back for your second year. As soon as you're there, do you start refiling everything all over again? Generally, the college. Actually, in that example, did we mention Johns Hopkins at all? I don't know if
I don't remember. I don't think the school was mentioned. It's just that
Okay. The school that shall remain nameless, that rhymes with Johns Hopkins. What's that?
My alma mater.
All right. Well, I don't think you're to blame for it. It was unless you were a lacrosse guy. I think that's what this kid was. So they every school has I shouldn't say every school. Most colleges have a later date for returning upperclassmen, and that tends to be, if the regular deadline, let's call it February for incoming kids, the returning date is usually like May. So I don't know if that's going to change this year. I don't think it will. Either way, it's just another thing to ask them about. You have to so the other thing, that the assumption, I'm not sure everyone knows this, that we're making here, is that you have to reapply every year for financial aid. It's not a one-shot thing. So sometimes people are stunned by that. So you do have to reapply, because what happens is, people have different incomes from year to year. They win a lottery, or they have an inheritance or something. So anyway, you have to just check the deadlines. They're different for returning students, and they're usually later. Question in the back.
If you negotiated a better financial aid package, then in your second year when you reapply, you're not exactly in a position to negotiate. You're going to that school. Does that affect things?
Yeah. So the question was, what happens in year 2 in terms of your award? Can it, whether you negotiate it or not, can it decrease or whatever? Do you have less leverage? So the thing that you're getting at is, do schools bait and switch, or do they front load? And the answer is, a lot of schools will do that. There's no real protection against that other than threatening to transfer and showing other offers, and that's just that's not really practical. But what I just sort of in the spirit of forewarned is forearmed, you can look up this is all self-disclosed by most colleges. If you look on something called the Common Data Set, Common Data Set. What that is sort of the equivalent of a clearinghouse of a bunch of statistical information that colleges self-report, and there's no site for it that I know of. It's just, if you were interested in a certain school, like Johns Hopkins, you would search Johns Hopkins Common Data Set, and what you want to look for that particular issue is, what is the average award given to all freshmen versus the average award given to all undergrads. And if it's a wide chasm between those two numbers, that's a red flag. But if it's a narrow number, then chances are they do not have a proclivity to take money away. There's also the other information that we kind of talked about here, like what's the average percentage of need, When you give an award, how is that need met? There's about 17 pages of statistical information for each school on the common data set. I think it's great, just again, it's time consuming, so just be careful about going down that rabbit hole if you go there. But I think it's great. I love stuff like that. Yes?
And if you have multiple 529s, I have three
Yeah.
children, two that are twins, and they will be all in school for 1 year, all in college, overlapping for 1 year. Is that held against you on any of the financial forms? If you're not having multiple 529s?
So the question is, multiple 529s for multiple kids, twins, or whatever. It's all part of the same stuff. So it's either all lumped together as a parent asset, or in some cases penalized much higher, more severely as a child asset. So it's all just lumped together as if you had one kid. They're all counted.
Might have to give away for that.
What's that?
Might have to give away for that.
You know the twins? Yeah, whoever's pissing you off, you just downsize. Yeah, that's the way it goes. So let me sign off on Facebook here. Bye everyone. Wait, you guys want to clap or something for Facebook? Pathetic, isn't it? So pathetic. Still on though. I don't know.